This video demonstrates iterating over a vector. We're going to write a program that averages 5 values inputted by the user. And thus far, our program has included the vector, because we're going to be using vectors, and IOStream for input for cin and output with cout. So let's start by declaring the size n of our vector. It's going to be 5 because we're going to collect 5 values. The next thing we can do is declare the vector. I'm going to make the vector type double, so the values could be floating point values such as 3.3, and we'll have this be called vals, and the size of our vector will be n. N is 5. Okay, so let's prompt the user to enter a value, and we'll store that value in the first location of our vector. Alright, let's compile. We have so far. And I'll enter 5.5. Okay. Let's make sure that that value is being stored in the first location correctly. Compile and execute. If I enter a value, I'll enter 5.5, and we have the output of 5.5. There we go. That's a good start. Let's iterate 5 times, asking the user for 5 values. So let's do a for loop, and we'll have an index variable I, which will start at 0, and we'll have this go until 5. And then we'll increment each loop, and I'm surrounding this code in the for loop that prompts the user to enter a value and then stores that value. And we're going to store that value in the vector at location I. Let's save the program, and we can compile. We have an error. I was not declared in the scope, and that's because I have not yet declared I, my index variable, and I will make it an int and initialize to 0. Let's compile again, run the program. I'll enter a value 5, 4, 3, 2, I already did, and then 1, and we get an error. This is a runtime error, terminate called after throwing an instance of out of range. And we had gotten this prompt, the enter a value. That was the 6th time, and then the program aborted. Why did this happen? This happens because the size of our vector is 5. And that means the index locations go from 0 to 4. But we're actually iterating up until the number 5. The index location 5 doesn't exist in the vector space. Just 0 through 4 exists. So we need to not have this equal sign and just be less than 5. So that will go from 0 to 4 in this case, because our vector is size 5 and the index locations are 0 through 4. So let's recompile and run this program. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and then we output a 5, and that was our index location of 0. Okay, let's do another for loop. I'm actually going to copy this for loop. We're going to iterate over the vector again, and this time we're going to output each of the elements in the vector so we can verify that we have correctly stored those elements. So we'll do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there we have the correct output. Excellent. The next thing we can do when we're wanting to get averages is we'd like to get the sum. And then from the sum of all the elements, we can divide by the number of elements, and that's the average. So we'll have a sum variable, and we'll make the sum initialize to 0, and the sum will equal the vals at index location I. So we'll loop through the vector at each element, and we'll store that into the sum. And then finally, we'll output the sum to make sure we did this correct. Okay, let's compile and run the program. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the sum is 1, and that's definitely not right. The sum should have been 15. So the problem here is the sum is just being assigned the current value of the current element of the vector, and the very last element is at the location index 4, and in location index 4 we had stored a 1, And so that's why sum is equal to 1. So what we should be doing is constantly adding sum to itself. Sum starts at 0, and then when I is 0, we'll add the first location of the vector to sum, and then sum will be the first location of the vector. And then I will increment going to the second location of the vector, and we will be adding together the first location plus the second location, which will make the first plus second location. And then we increment I again. And now we're into the third loop, and we're summing together the first and second with the third, making a sum of the first, second, and third. And this continues to repeat. So sum will actually sum up each element in the vector. Let's take a look. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we are. The sum is now 15. And from the sum, we can compute the average. We'll do sum divided by n. I'm going to put parentheses to clearly show what we're doing in the output statement. And we can recompile and then execute. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 outputs an average of 3. That's right, the sum is 15, number is 5, so 15 divided by 5, average is 3. That looks pretty good. Now we can remove this output of each element. We don't need that. That was good for debugging, but we don't need that anymore. Let's do one last check. This time let's actually use some variables that are doubles. So we can do 0.9, we could do 7.6, and 4.4, and we get a sum of 23.2 and an average of 4.64. Cool. Thank you.